Hello, everyone. Today is July 9th, and we're moving into the book of Galatians. Galatians is an interesting book as the theme addresses the issue that Paul is making on justification by faith alone. And he had been fighting against a Jewish audience, these Judaizers that were continuing to embrace the Old Testament laws and considering many of them to still be binding. Now, these Judaizers were really Christians, but they were having a hard time dropping some of the legalistic aspects, especially things like circumcision. And so Paul then is addressing this concern and this struggle that seems to be going on. So in the first chapter of Galatians, you look in that first verse is this introduction. He's addressing his calling as an apostle. He begins, Paul, an apostle. And he says, not from men nor through men, but through Jesus Christ. One of the reasons that he's establishing this is because his calling's being challenged, especially because some of the Jews are not liking Paul's separation between the old and the new covenant and addressing some of these religious, legalistic things. And so now they're trying to discredit him and challenge the authority that he has. So he then is going back to his qualification, that he's an apostle, not chosen by man, but through Jesus Christ. And so he affirms then to them, now he addresses this, and it says here to the churches of Galatia, and that's not a town, it's not like Corinth, what we just got done reading through the book of Corinthians. This is more or less a region, which is a collection of churches there, and he's writing the letter here that will be that's going to be passed around to all these different congregations. So now he gives these introductions, and then he begins to come down. Look in verse 6, you'll see, first of all, he says, I marvel, which means that he's actually stunned with what he's hearing and the reports that are coming back to him. And he says, and here's what he's surprised at, is that there is a turning away so quickly from that which these early believers had been established in. And so he says, in fact, he identifies it as a different gospel. He says, you're turning away to a different or another gospel. So look what he says. He says now, some are trying to trouble you, and they're trying to pervert the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's a distortion of the true gospel. And verse 8, he says, even if I or an angel from heaven preach to you any other gospel than what we have preached to you, here's what he says, let him be accursed. Now, those are very strong words. And he's basically identifying the authority of Jesus Christ and this gospel. And he's warning them, don't turn away, don't pervert it, don't corrupt this. Don't be going to a different gospel. There's only one. And he says, I don't care if an angel from heaven comes. You and I are going to be accursed if we listen to that distortion. So he makes a very clear case here. And then in verse 10, he says, I don't seek to please man. That's not my calling. I'm not here to please people. I'm here for the cause of Christ. I'm an ambassador. I'm a bondservant of Jesus Christ. And Paul understood the conflict, that it is hard, and he'll address this a little bit later when he talks about even with Peter and some of the apostles and how they caved because of the pressure and the peer pressure around him. But he said, listen, I'm unmovable on this. I'm not going to be influenced by the opinions of men. So then he makes a call about his apostleship. He says there in verse 11, the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man. And he says it came through the revelation of Jesus Christ. So the authority of which Paul is standing and casting all this upon is the calling in his life. It was a revelation from Jesus Christ himself. Verse 13, he said, you've heard of my former conduct. He's laying out the groundwork here of how his past and where he's been from. and how he persecuted and those early believers in the church of God, and how he tried to stop it and destroy it. All these things, he's laying his case out, the opposition that he had to this gospel himself. And then he says in verse 15, as he identifies his calling, he says, it pleased God who separated me from my mother's womb and called me through his grace. And so what he's saying here is that God called me. And I think that as we look at this introduction in chapter 1, that he makes a very clear case here. And he identifies the fact, don't pervert the gospel. There is the one gospel of Jesus Christ. Don't be deceived. And then he's talking about the conflict between pleasing men and pleasing God. But he makes it very clear that this message of the revelation of Jesus Christ and the gospel of Jesus Christ was indeed that which came directly from heaven. Well, there's one thing that we know for sure, and that is this: that you and I are justified by faith alone through Jesus Christ. And it's not of works, not based upon what we can do, because if we could have done it, Jesus Christ would never have had to come. This is such a beautiful affirmation for all of us, because it demonstrates the impossibility of any one of us of saving ourselves. And it makes it crystal clear that it's through Jesus Christ and him alone. And he is the one who sets us free. Well, live in that freedom. Live in that authority that you have through Jesus Christ. And thank God that you and I are saved by his grace.